This is 100% true story that happened to a woman in Madison, Wisconsin. Now, there was this woman named Sherry who moved into this house with her two children in Madison, Wisconsin. Now, she said, at the time, she didn't believe in anything supernatural. She really thought that was a bunch of nonsense. But she said, right away when they moved in, she would notice, out of the corner of her eye, sometimes shadows moving across the walls. She would hear strange noises that she couldn't explain. But she said, for the most part, it was just a normal house. One night, she's upstairs in her bedroom and she's folding laundry. She hears talking coming from her son's room. So she makes her way over to his room. The door's closed, and she hears her son having a full-on conversation with someone. And she's like, who is he talking to, at 12:30 at night? So she opens the door, and when she looks in his room, he is not in his bed. So she starts yelling for him. She looks down and sees him next to the side of his bed, on his knees, crouched down, with his head under the bed, talking to someone. And she's like, hey, who are you talking to? Like, who's under there? And her son's like, I can't tell you. And she said, what do you mean you can't tell me? Like, who's under the bed? And he's like, I can't say. He'll get mad. And she's like, what? Who's under there? So she runs over to the bed and she looks underneath there. It's empty. There's nothing under there. So she's like, you know what? Just get back in bed. Like, just stop, doing whatever you're doing. Several weeks pass, and like on a regular basis, she keeps finding her son talking to someone under the bed, except there's no one there. So after a few weeks of this happening, she thinks maybe something is wrong with her son. So she takes him to this child therapist. The therapist assesses him and says, he seems completely fine. It's probably just his imagination. So several months pass and he keeps on doing this. Well, one day she's sitting down in the living room with him and they're talking when she notices he has some scratches and bruises all over his body. And she's like, where did you get those scratches and bruises from? Like, what's going on? And he's like, I can't say, I can't tell you. And she's like, yes, you have to tell me, what is going on with you? And finally he breaks down and he starts crying and stuff. And he just starts freaking out. And then he runs up to his room. So the mom, at this time is like, I don't know what to do. What is going on with my son? She's just panicking. Later that night, she's awoken to her son screaming in his bedroom. She runs as fast as she can. She goes in his room. She finds him halfway underneath the bed. He's grabbing onto the bed frame, and it looks like something is pulling him under the bed. So she immediately grabs him, pulls him out from under the bed. She looks under there. There's no one there. So she's like, you know what? This is weird. You're sleeping with me tonight. You're going to be in bed with me tonight. So they go back to her bedroom. He lays down. He falls asleep. She's sitting in bed. She can't sleep. She's freaked out about this whole situation. When all of a sudden she hears, shh, hey, come under the bed. And she's like, what? She looks over. Her son is sleeping. But then once again she hears, hey, come here under the bed. I need to talk to you. And it's like a man's voice. And she's like, no, who are you? Go away. And the man's like, come on, get under the bed. I need to tell you something. And she's like, no, I'm not going under the bed. And she said this man, whoever he was, just started yelling obscenities and getting really angry. So she grabs her son. They get out of the house. And she said she left that night and never went back. And still to this day, that house sits there. And she said she's talked to the neighbors. And they said since she's moved, several families have lived there and they move out immediately.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
I've got one for you.
So, when I was 19, I moved into this house after a breakup, and I found this room on Facebook Marketplace. This girl was selling her room or whatever, subleasing it, and it was, I think, $250 a month. And I was like, yeah, let's go. So, I moved into this place, and it is a very old home. It was made out of local stone, and it was on this block that all the houses were made out of local stone. And if they weren't made out of local stone, they would not still be standing. I'll just say that. They're very old. So this house had been converted into separate apartments, and I was living in a room that you had to walk through a bathroom to get to, and this room was also connected to another bedroom, but we just put like furniture in front of it, so it kind of felt like a bedroom. So that's where I was staying. And the first night that I was sleeping there, I was woken up out of a dream, don't know what I was dreaming about, and I saw this woman just like hovering over me, looking at me. And I looked at her for a few seconds, and when she realized I was looking at her, I just saw her eyes get really wide and she looked nervous and she disappeared. And I've never really given that a lot of credit because I was waking up out of a dream. Sometimes you just see things. I don't know. But then the next day, when I was leaving to go do something else, I was opening my door, going through the bathroom to get out of the house. I swore that I saw someone like crouched in the corner of the shower. And I thought that was weird. But because the night before and how I was like, that was probably just a dream. I'm probably just paranoid right now. I'm not going to give it any credit. So time goes on, right? And I get a cat. Love the little thing. She's precious. And it gets to a point where, I'm 19, I'm full-time college student. Her food was more expensive than mine, and I couldn't afford to keep her anymore. So one of my friends took her, and I noticed as soon as she was gone that things started to get a little hairy. Like from that day forward till I moved out, every single day something happened. Didn't matter if it was daytime, nighttime, or anything. But that little figure that I had seen crouched in the shower was a little boy, and he was very upset that my cat was not there anymore. So, what did he do? He terrorized me. Like, it got to the point where I had to rearrange my room so when I would wake up and roll over in the middle of the night, I wouldn't see him because he would stand in the corner where I had my cat's stuff as if like protesting that she was gone. And that was every single night from that point on. During the day, I would have hangers and clothes fly out of my closet. Did not matter. Door would open, closet and clothes would just fall out. And it became a normal thing, like I would see him and I wouldn't think twice about it because I didn't want to engage. I didn't want to encourage it. So what I would do is I wouldn't say anything. If he was really scaring me, I'd go to someone else's house. I just dip out because like child spirits, you don't really know if it's a real child or not. I think this was a real child because he was just throwing tantrums and taking it all out on me. The scariest thing that ever happened with him, though, was I was doing laundry one day. I guess my cat had probably been gone for a couple months now, and I'd become adjusted to seeing him. It wasn't anything new. And I was folding my laundry on my bed, and I watched him crawl out of my closet, look at me, and crawl underneath my bed. It actually makes me sick to my stomach, even thinking about it, because I don't know if you've seen any scary movie. It was horrifying. So yeah, I dipped. I didn't come back for like 2 days because that was horrifying. And before I left, though, I did get on my hands and knees and look under the bed to see if he was there. One of the bravest moments of my life, he wasn't. And at that point, I was already done. I didn't care that I didn't see him. I was done. So, I mean, my laundry was clean. It didn't matter. I dipped. And from that point on, It never got that bad again, but he was almost always in the shower when I would be leaving. And the way that our bathroom was set up, like the mirror faced the shower, and there would be times where like I would be getting ready. I'm crying. I would be getting ready and I would see his little stinking head pop up in the mirror. And I had to start sleeping with a face mask because I would roll over in the middle of the night and he would either be in the corner of my cat's stuff or he would be at the end of my bed or he'd be in another corner. Like it was something straight out of Insidious. And I'd say that's one of the worst ghost stories I have at that house, definitely, because I never saw that woman again. There was one figure I kept seeing in the kitchen, but I never saw their face. They only stood with their back to me. So, you know, I think our timelines were just crossing or something. But no one else in the house that lived there ever had any encounters that I know of. And yeah, so that's how I was terrorized by a little child, ghost, spirit, for having to get rid of a cat, for being poor, essentially.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
This is a deviation from my usual content, but I love the scary, spooky stuff. Now, while this isn't about ghosts, this is going to be about the abnormal or the paranormal. And as a Haitian American, let me tell you now, they believe in people turning into animals, zombies, and all types of weird voodoo stuff. I was in junior high school at the time, and I'm living in Brooklyn, and my cousins come to visit from out of town. Now, traditionally, when you come to visit a different place, you go to see all the family. And one particular trip, they made to go visit an elder. I'll just call her an elder. So we go to spend time with this elder. And while we're there, we're just like begging my mom to sleep over, which ultimately turned out to be a horrible decision. So we get to the house and, you know, you're going upstairs, putting your stuff away. And in the room where this elder was sleeping, there was a Bible open with a candle lit, like one of those long 7-day candles. It was lit. As soon as we walked into the room, the candle snuffs out. Here's the thing. We are by the door when this happens. There's not a window open. There's nothing that could possibly have snuffed that candle out, but it goes completely out. That was event number one. The cousin that went upstairs with me was just like, did you see that? I was like, yeah, I saw that. Did you see that? We both made sure that we both understood what we saw. Later that night, the 4 girls all slept together in a big bed, and then the oldest boy went to go sleep in another bed, and he was in the room with the elder. The cousin who was with me earlier that had seen the candle snuffed out stayed awake while our 2 younger siblings stayed asleep. There's a huge statue of Mary across from the bed where we're sleeping, and we start to see blood pouring from the statue's eyes. I look over at her and I'm like, I'm calling my mom. So there's a phone by the bed. I pick up the phone. Mind you, it's late at night and I'm calling my mother. Had to hit her up a couple times because she could not fathom that it was us calling her. So she finally picks up the phone and I'm like, I need you to come and get us right now. But you know, older people politics, they're like, it's not going to look right. If we come and get you, it's going to cause a problem. So you have to stay. Just make it through the night. It gets worse because the thing, whatever this entity is that's in this house, must have gotten agitated that I called my mom to come get us because now we hear scratching at the door. This is happening in intervals of maybe like a minute or 2 in between, but we hear against a wooden door. At this point, everybody's up and they all hear it and we're like, what the heck is going on? And none of us have the balls to get up to go look and see what the heck is on the other side of the door. Needless to say, we did not sleep that night. Morning comes and the boy cousin that was sleeping in the other room with the elder, we asked him, hey, did you hear anything that was going on last night? And he was like, yes, but he was too scared to get up and see anything. Fast forward a couple days later, the cousins leave. I'm home from school because I'm sick and they leave me with this elder. As you can imagine, I'm terrified, but I'm sick, so I fall asleep ultimately at some point. I wake up, I go look for said elder, and she's upstairs. And I hear her upstairs having a conversation, but it's only her and I in the house. Now, for context, she could have easily been on the phone, but it sounded like I could hear the other person in the house speaking too. Y'all, when I go upstairs, I open the door. There is a my-size Barbie standing erect. And then once I open the door, it falls over. Now, if you remember anything about the My Size Barbies, they cannot stand up on their own 2 feet. They were not like flat-footed. They didn't have a stand. They could not stand up. There's no possible, humanly, physically, scientifically possible way that this Barbie could have been standing up straight. And then why did it fall when I got into the room? Still can't explain it to this day. But what I found even more weird is that elder left that house like maybe a couple years later, and the kid who the doll belonged to was not of age to play with the doll anymore. And when I saw the doll, I was creeped out because I'm just like, why is that doll still here? Like, you're too grown to be playing with this doll. She says to me, it's not for me. The elder wanted to keep it. I was done. I literally told my mother to come get me because I'm not staying there. I have a ton more stories just like this. If y'all want to hear, let me know.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first. When I was 8 years old, my family and I moved to a small town in the Midwest, and it was a farm town. It was built in like the early 1800s. I think it was part of like the Homestead Act or something. It was, had a bunch of acres, a barn that had burnt down. Like, it was an active farm back then. Lots of history. People definitely passed away on the property, that we knew for sure. And man, it wasn't like very obvious as a child. I was super intuitive and I didn't know what to do with that intuition. So I naturally got a Ouija board. And of course I dragged along my best friend and my sister and a couple other friends on this Ouija board journey where we would go and sit at the top of the stairs to the basement, and we would turn all the lights off and turn candles on and then ask this thing questions, and it responded. And I don't tell people this story. It sounds psycho. The fact that other people are there to verify all of these things and validate gives me inner peace, but I don't tell people. But it worked. And unlike what I thought would happen when it would move, even when we lift all of our hands off of it, it's still moving, is how aggressively it moved. It wasn't gentle. It was like very sharp. And so much time would pass when we were in there talking to this entity as well. Like, we would think 10 minutes went by and it would be 2 hours. Like, insane. Being little kids, we wanted to know questions and answers like, who are we going to marry when we grow up? Or how many kids are we going to have? Or just questions like that. And every single time we start, it would give us answers at first, like, and it would tell us about itself. We would say, like, what's your name? And it would just say demon, D-E-M-O-N, like, over and over again. When we would ask questions about me, at first it would like give us answers, and then it would just spell bitch repeatedly, B-I-T-C-H, B-I-T-C-H, B-I-T-C-H. Horrifying. Like, any question about me. Also, sorry if I seem lackluster. I already told this whole story and it deleted. It was so freaky. We're also having like visuals of like hands reaching towards the planchette, like in the candlelight flicker. This entity gave us details saying that it was like buried in the cemetery. A cemetery that was like local, like the name was legit. It gave us like, I think it either gave us a plot number or it was just like the last name. And we did go there, and what we found was crazy. Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
It's finally time to tell my story. So when I was an undergrad, somewhere around like 2011, 2012, I went to CarMax, bought my first big girl purchase by myself, no co-signer, It was a used car. It was a 2009 Jeep Compass, and I loved that little thing. So I spent all day at the dealership, and it was late at night. I had to drive back to my dorm, so that was like an hour away, right? By the time I get to the free parking lot, it's already dark outside. I reach in the back seat to grab my backpack, and guess what's staring at me? It was a little Asian girl. Scared the shit out of me. I grabbed my stuff so fast, I darted to my dorm room, closed the door, and when I tell you I was huffing and puffing and super scared, because what did I just see? I know I did not see what I know I saw on day one. So the very next day I called my grandmother. This is very important because my grandma is Chinese and Jamaican. Not to mention she's a medium. She sees spirits and she talks to people all the time. So I'm just like, she gotta have something to do with her because those are her people. So I asked my grandma, has anybody in our family lost a little Asian girl like that was like 3 or 4 years old? She says, no, doesn't sound familiar. Why, what's up? So I tell her what I saw in the car, and she says, oh, no, she's there to protect you. It's fine. Winter's approaching. I've been walking to work this whole time. Bought a car, hadn't even drove it because I'm scared. Eventually, I talked myself into, okay, just drive during the daytime, maybe talk to her, see if you can get anything out of her. So for a couple months, I tried talking to her, got nothing, no response. She would just stare. She would just sit and look at me. Eventually, I guess I just kind of warmed up to her, like, she's just gonna be here. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, this is still my car. And anytime I would have people in the car, she would just disappear, like she knew what her role was. Fast forward, and this girl has now been riding in my car for almost 5 years. Still doesn't talk. At this point, I'm in grad school at the Med Center. I'm dirt broke, I'm working multiple jobs, and I'm driving for Uber and Lyft on the side, right? The last time I saw her was when I was getting ready to go out to go drive. That night, I got a ride request to go pick up somebody from the casino. Turns out it was my classmate from the med center. So we're chopping it up in the car, right? I come across this intersection. It's a four-way intersection, and at the red light, there was an officer sitting there just waiting at his red light. I remember just kind of glancing down, making sure that I was going the right speed limit, and boom, I got hit. It was a big black Suburban. The guy was drunk. And he kept driving after he hit my car, and the only reason why he stopped is because he hit a tree. The officer saw everything happen. It was all caught on the dash camera. I'm gonna just be real with you. That night, should have been dead. Okay, he ripped the whole front end of my Jeep off. It was to smithereens. There was nothing. There was like I can't even explain. Airbags had deployed. I'd never been in a car accident before, so I didn't know airbags were white. I thought I was in heaven, and I remember being so angry because everybody said when you die you're so peaceful. I was angry. I was a telephone operator. I was working like 2 and 3 jobs. I was putting myself to grad school, and I was miserable. And I was just like, God, this is how you gonna do me? Eventually I come to it because now I hear the girl in the back seat of my car screaming, Larissa, we gotta get you out. Larissa, we gotta get you out. And I was like, oh shit, I'm not dead. Okay. When I stepped out of my car, my shoe was across the street. When I tell you I got hit so bad, my car spun across 3 different lanes. The whole front end of my car was missing, gone, smithereens, just smoke. Obviously the officer runs him down. And then his girlfriend gets out the car. You get off my man. He didn't do nothing to me. You get off my man. And I just remember sitting on the curb like, what just happened? So we start the lawsuit process. Fast forward, about a year later, it's my birthday. Me and my best friend are gonna go to the spoken poetry word slam thingamajig. Just because I just wanted to get out the house, you know what I mean? And out of the corner of my eye, I see this guy sitting at a table, and I am so intrigued because I just want to know, what is he doing? He's got like tarot cards. So best friend was like, go talk to him, like go get a reading. I said, no. You don't understand. My people are Jamaican. We don't do, I'm not disturbing nothing. Plus, I already know what I know that I don't tell people. So I did this reading with her right by my side because I'm a little nervous. So I sit at this guy's table. He has me hold out my hands. He puts all these little animal bones and trinkets and stuff, and he says, let the pieces fall where they may fall. And he said, by the way, happy birthday. I said, what? How did he know it was my birthday? Oh, I see what you're doing there. I see what you're doing there. It takes a while to evaluate the pieces, and he goes, so there's a lot here I want to talk to you about, but the first thing I need to ask you is, tell me about your car accident. I said, got hit by a drunk driver like a year ago. Yeah, okay, what? He says, no, tell me what really happened. I never told anybody about this. I never told anybody about this. What do you mean? To the best of my knowledge, I'm trying to remember exactly everything. And I tell him I got hit by a drunk driver. He was going pretty fast. T-boned my car, but it only hit the front end of my car. I don't know how it didn't hit me. And he said, so what about the little girl that's in the car? I said, I'm playing dumb. Why am I playing dumb? He knows this stuff. He clearly does. I don't know this man. I've never met him. So I tell him, yeah, okay, there's a little girl that's been in my car for, a couple of years or whatever. He said, do you know that she turned the wheel for you? I said, what are you talking about? He said she cut the wheel to save your life because she died in that car and she didn't want you to die. He's right. That was the last time I saw her. I asked him, can you give me more information? Who is she? Why was she here? Is she in my family? There was really no other information. She's not related to me at all. She just didn't want to see me die in that car. So during that reading, he did ask me some other questions and stuff, but he told me, you're a medium and I need you to start acting like it. For the sake of not sounding crazy, I've never told anybody else outside of my mom and my grandma and my family that I be seeing shit, but I don't be saying shit. Nothing it's just normal. But I know that you don't talk about that stuff out loud because it freaks out people. How did he know this? I don't know. He said, you have abilities that can put me out of business. And I need you to really lean into that. Right? Well, he's right. I am a medium, and I'm not that great at it. I'm honestly scared about everything, and I do not trust being in the dark. Side note, I've never had anything evil or wicked happen to me. I've always felt protected. I still feel protected. But if you want to hear another story about how I saved my dad's life by telling him he has cancer, let me know.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
So I had to hop on this trend because I could literally make a whole entire series about all the experiences I have had growing up, especially in the house that I grew up in. But I'll start with one really creepy story that literally gave me chills and still freaks me out to this day. When I was younger, my family had Korean exchange students that lived in our house, and um, one of the students shared a room with me. So we had a bunk bed, and she took the bottom, and I took the top. Um, and during this time, my dad had removed all of the doors to all the rooms in our basement because we were getting new carpet. Um, and so I wanted a little bit more privacy. So for Christmas, my grandma gifted me some door beads, but they didn't come to the floor all the way. They were about a foot off of the floor. And my sister Callie would always come in and just steal my clothes, my makeup, whatever she wanted to use. And I was a pretty light sleeper, so she would slide under the door beads to come in the morning before school and to not wake me up. Um, there was one particular night where my exchange student was visiting her uncle in another state for Thanksgiving. So I was alone in my room. It was nighttime, everybody was in bed, and it was dark, and I heard my door beads. So I looked over and I see what looks like my sister, just like her silhouette, and she's got long, curly hair, and she was crawling on all fours with her hair, and her hair was like hanging in front of her face, and she was crawling on all fours, sliding under the door beads, and I could see the door beads like hitting against her back as she slid under. And once she got under, she like hurried to the end of my bed where the closet was at the foot of my bed. So I was thinking to myself, like, oh, I caught her in the act this time. I'm going to totally tell her that I knew she was stealing my clothes. So I snuck to the edge, to the end of the bunk bed. And I just like, wow, like tried to scare her. And when I looked over the end of my bed, there was nobody there. So I just started screaming, and then my sister ended up running down the hall, and she came in and turned on my light, and she's like, what? And I was just like, you have, and I just freaked out and told her what had happened. But that was one time that was super, super creepy.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely.
I have one. When I was 16, 17 years old, my bedroom was the attic of my parents' house. One night, I proceed to have one of the most real feeling dreams I've ever had. In the dream, I'm sleeping in my bed. I wake up in the dream to an older woman standing in the corner of my bedroom. I do not know this woman, never seen this woman. She actually looked quite ghost-like, a little translucent. You could see through her a bit. Like she she looked like a ghost. She proceeds to ask me, I have a son. He needs someone to play with. Would you mind playing with him? Not sure why I chose to say yes, but I did. And I was like, yeah, I'll totally play with your son. That seems totally normal. Like, we're in a dream, so, like, fine, I'll play with your son. As soon as I say, yeah, I'll play with your son, he appears, like, if I'm laying in my bed, like, she's on this side, he appears on this side of the room, like, right where the stairs are, the top of the steps. And he starts to walk over to my bed, comes to my bed, and he's like, let's play arm wrestling. So I'm like, yeah, no problem. Let's play arm wrestling. So I put my hand up like this. He puts his hand in my hand, and we are arm wrestling. At first, it's like a good give and go. We're like, oh, yeah. And then, like, he pins my hand completely down. I feel his hand, hold on. I feel his hand around my hand, ice cold. He pins my hand down and is staring at me. And I'm like, okay, like, let's play again. And he goes, I don't think you want to play this game with me. Just like that, like, dead stare. I don't think you want to play this game with me. So I'm like, what does that mean? Let's play, like, okay, let's play the game. So he goes, no problem. Digs his nails into my hand like that and starts pinning my hand to the bed, yelling, I win, 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 I win. I rip my hand away from his. I feel the scratch marks on my, like right here. And then he takes a step back with this like grin on his face. And he becomes this like black cloud of smoke. And I know that sounds unreal, but just stay with me. So he's this big cloud of smoke. This is all still in the dream. I get up, I'm screaming, I jump out of my bed. Here's where it gets crazy. I jump out of my bed in the dream and I wake up in real life and I am fully standing on my feet. So as I'm standing on my feet, I'm like, what the fuck just happened? I'm down the stairs, out the room, right? And so my mom and my sister are downstairs in the kitchen cooking breakfast. My mom is a very spiritual person, so I have no problem just being like, yo, this is what just happened. Um, and it's like, disregard the dream if you want, but I was fully standing when I woke up. Insane. And so typically, not saying typically like this happens all the time to me, but like my mom has, we regularly would have priests come over, bless the house, things like that. So like that's not weird. So like my mom putting holy water around, throwing holy water around the house is not like an odd thing in my household. So like I'm expecting her to be like, okay, let me go get the holy water. I'll spray your room down. Like not a big deal. She goes, the holy water is right there. You're going to go get it and go upstairs and throw it around your room with some salt. I'm like, why are you not doing it? She's like, I think you should do it. And I'm like, okay, this is insane. So I take the salt, I take the holy water, I go upstairs. My sister's like, I'll come with you, but I'm staying at the bottom of the stairs. Everybody's acting scared. And so I'm like, okay, I'm not crazy. This is something. So I have the holy water, I have the salt, I go upstairs. I have the holy water in like a little cup and I have the salt. I go upstairs and so I'm like throwing the holy water around, just a little flap around. And I have the salt and I throw it onto my bed and it sizzles. Bitch. I was going. I never ran down a flight of stairs faster in my life. I don't even think I touched one step. I jumped from the top 11 steps down, bow, hit it. I was downstairs the next flight, bow, hit it. I didn't stop for shit. I said, the only way I'm going back up there is if y'all bring a priest to hose this house down with a fire truck of holy water. I'm not playing at all with y'all. And so my mama got the priest to come and he blessed the whole house, top to bottom. He didn't miss no floor, no nook, no cranny. And I never had an experience like that again. So I don't know where that little boy is at, but I hope his soul is at rest because he.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
And I'll go second. So these are admittedly not my stories, they're my dad's stories. Just a little background on my father. He doesn't believe in ghosts at all. Not even a little. He thinks that that is made up. It's fake. And now that I've gotten that out of the way, he has experienced the scariest hauntings I've ever heard about in my life. When he was younger, I would say probably about like 9 to 13, in that age range, he had a friend that started getting into like kind of occult weird things. He started feeling a little bit uncomfortable around this friend, and he remembers 2 really specific incidents with this friend that made him stop hanging out with this kid. One of which was they were at a river with a bunch of other boys and they were swimming, playing as kids do. And this friend in question was in the water next to my father. And while they're playing, my dad looks up and standing across the river at the tree line, and this is in rural Canada, like in the middle of nowhere, Canada, standing at the tree line is that friend. And he's just staring at my dad and he just goes like this. Mind you, that kid is next to my dad at that time, so he's seeing 2 of them. And the other one just turns around and goes into the woods after beckoning my dad after him. I hate that story. It makes my eyes tear up. I hate that story. But my dad, being a child, still hung out with this kid So he goes over to his house, and this kid is sitting in this big, like, lazy boy recliner chair. And he's sitting there, and he's kind of just staring at my dad while they're talking, acting super strange. And he looks at my dad, and he goes, "I've been in your dreams." And as soon as he says that, my dad hears, like, pounding on the underside of this kid's chair. He's sitting cross-legged in his chair, not moving, and he hears something beating on the underside of the chair. And this kid goes, "I've been in your dreams." And my dad, stone-faced, dead-ass, looks at me and goes, "And the fucked up thing? He had been in my dreams." My father doesn't believe in ghosts. I asked him to explain these to me in, like, a scientific way. He goes, "I was just hallucinating." I was just having a vivid hallucination. Anyway, those are just two of my favorite little stories from my father, who swears the ghosts are not real.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Me, I have one. So growing up, I lived in North Carolina, and our house was 1000% haunted. My sister follows me on here. Like, if she sees this video, she'll corroborate my story because Jesus fucking Christ. So when I was little, my dad was overseas. He was in the military. And so then when he came home, I think I was probably like 8, maybe 9. No, I was 8. And when he came home, I was like, oh, I want to sleep in the bed with daddy. Like, I want to sleep with dad. And he's like, yeah, of course. So I slept in his bed, and his door was open. And I was up that night late reading with a flashlight because I was like, oh, I'm going to blow his socks off reading this book to him. And that night, I heard footsteps coming up the stairs, and it was like keys jangling. And so I like go under the covers, have the covers up to here. And in the doorway, I see an apparition of my father. My dad is laying next to me, but I see my dad as plain as day. Oh, it makes me sick just thinking about it. He's like a little bit transparent, like I can kind of see through him, but it's my father. It's 2000s glasses on the back of the head, spiked cargo shorts with the keys on the carabiner. Like, it was exactly my dad. Then he starts going, come here, Vivian. It's my name. Come here, Vivian. And I was like, no way. And I put my covers over my head, and when I looked back out, he was gone. I have so many other stories about that house, but that's the one that sticks with me the most because it scared me so bad. I'll tell you one. I don't remember this. This was told to me by my dad because I was a baby when it happened. But so there is basically 3 stories for our house. There's like the downstairs level that has a pool table, like billiards. And we are on the top floor, so 3 floors above that. And I'm a baby, like baby, sleeping in my crib, can't get out. And then one night, my dad hears me crying. And he goes to my room, crib empty, no baby. He starts freaking out, obviously. And he's searching around the house, following my cry. I'm downstairs, 3 stories down, on top of the pool table. I'm sat on the pool table, like holding a pool ball, crying. I'm telling you, I was probably like 14 months, 15 months. You cannot get out of your crib. Nor could I walk down all those stairs and then get on top of a pool table. Then what? And in that house, me and my sisters, we were on top of the stairs. They're a lot older than me, and they know this story. We were on top of the stairs, and we were looking down into the darkness. Nobody else was home, and we were just like playing with a bouncy ball, like throwing shit down there. You know how kids are stupid. And we threw a bottle cap down there, and it threw back at us like.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
I live in Oregon, and a friend of mine was having her bachelorette party at a cabin in the woods at the base of a very well-known mountain. I was looking forward to going. A lot of people I care about were going to be on that trip, and I thought it sounded like a really fun weekend just to get away and be in nature. And the first thing that happened when I left my house and I was just on the outskirts of town, I got such a strong feeling to turn around and grab some cleansing tools like sage, Palo Santo, whatever I had on hand. And it was so strong, I turned the car around, went home. My husband's like, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Oh, I don't know. I just had to use the bathroom and I don't want to use the gas station." Totally fed him a line because I didn't want him to get worried. It was a really pleasant drive up there, a couple of hours. You're at least in the forest for, I'd say, 45 to 50 minutes before you find this house. This house. As soon as I pull up into the garage, I immediately just have this overwhelmingly heavy feeling that I really can't explain. Two other people had arrived. They were there taking care of a lot of the organizational details. And I walked in and my two friends are standing in the kitchen here and here. These are pictures of the property. And I walk in and automatically, just with my sensitivities, I am like, there is something up there that is funky and I don't like it and I don't want to go near it. I feel like I am being stared at and it is highly dark, highly uncomfortable. And so my two friends in the kitchen are like, "Hey Meg, how's it going? We're glad you're here." I'm like, "Yeah, how are you guys doing?" They're like, "We're great." And I'm like, "Yeah. Other than the thing that's up those stairs that's been staring at you the whole time." And they were like, "Oh my God, we were waiting for you to get here because we just had such a weird feeling and we're freaked out and we wanted to know what you thought," because they know I've got like sensitivities or whatever. I walked up the stairs and I got to about this spot right here and I stopped because I literally felt like an energetic wall, like, do not go any further. My friend said, "That's really weird. That's literally as far as we went to before you got here." And we were, they were just checking out the house and they went up into that weird little loft attic area and they were like, "Nope, no further." This is the top of the stairs right here. And if you look way down in this loft area, there's a little door with a crawl space and it was shut when we got there. As people started arriving, we were having fun joking, and one of the women went up there and we were talking about how creepy it was, and she said, "Was the door open when you guys went up there?" The crawl space door had been opened and none of us had been up there. So that night we're just kind of settling into the house, settling into the weekend, trying to figure out what's on the agenda, trying to have a good time. But if you're sensitive, you can just tell from these pictures. The place just had a creepy vibe. Those two same friends are sleeping in this room, and I am sleeping down here, downstairs, alone on a pull-out couch. First thing we notice is the incredible amount of dead insects all over the floor and even in the sheets. That night, one of my friends had her electronics go crazy at 3 a.m. I felt such a heavy layer of darkness. The first night I tried to go to sleep downstairs here on that pull-out couch, I felt like things were staring at me, circling me. I was this close to getting up and leaving in the middle of the night with a 2-hour drive home, rolling in at 5 a.m. with my husband, like, "What are you doing?" But I got this very clear message: you need to stay and you need to help hold up some kind of energetic barrier. I had a dream when I eventually fell asleep that the entire property was surrounded by fire and the fire couldn't penetrate this weird line that we were all trying to hold. So I was like, fine, okay, I guess I will stay in this freaky ass house. The next morning, we're all hanging out on the balcony and talking, having breakfast, having coffee, and people start to share their experiences. People were touched. People staying in the upstairs bedroom in the bunk beds had water dripped onto their faces, coming out of nowhere, and there were no leaks in the ceiling. It wasn't raining that weekend. Later that day, when most of the crew was playing yard games, like down here in the grass, one of the women was hanging out over here, and there was a deck of cards that literally got blown, and the cards were like flung into her face. I have no idea how that happened. At this point, I am getting so drained physically and feeling so sick, I need to go lie down. I'm alone in the house again, but I'm watching everybody from outside these windows where I'm at. Gosh, I can't point. And at this point, I'm just praying. Like, I'm here for a reason. These are people that I really care about and love, and I do not want to leave them here because I feel like I can be more helpful trying to hold off whatever this thing is. I did eventually run out to the corner store to test and make sure that the physical symptoms I was experiencing were really tied to the house and not just something going on with me. And as soon as I left the house, I felt so much better. But I had to come back. People were having personality changes while at the house. Like, they would start to withdraw, go take a shower, try and like snap out of it because they just felt something come over them. What I was picking up on primarily that kind of like lived in that upstairs loft area was something that was not nor had ever been human. This sounds really crazy because I've had run-ins with some really, really dark, start with a D word kind of entities. This wasn't even that. It almost felt like not from here, if you catch my drift. But it was, what I saw in my mind's eye was almost like a spidery looking thing. And it's interesting because another woman who was there told me that they saw a spidery looking image of this big nasty thing like crawl from up in this main area down the stairs into the loft area where we were sleeping. And what's odd is that the safe places in the house would change depending on the time of day. It's like the rooms would just start to feel off. Another person said they were almost picking up on the presence of a man, like an older man. I wasn't picking up on a person, dead or alive, definitely a thing. The second night, one of my friends and I were just so uncomfortable about the idea of going to sleep that we just stayed up kind of deliriously talking to each other until, God, it must have been close to 4 a.m. just to not be asleep and unconscious in that environment. What's so weird and actually kind of miraculous if you think about it is that the bride was not affected. She was the only one out of all of us who had no idea what was going on because she was in her soon-to-be wed splendor. And also, this particular person has an incredible amount of spiritual protection around her. So we were all really grateful for that, and we'd kind of like whisper about what happened to you last night and this happened to me in the bathroom earlier, and we were all just kind of keeping it out of the realm of awareness of the bride, fortunately. By the last morning, I'll never forget, one of my friends had set up a beautiful create-your-own crepe kind of buffet line, and we were all sitting down around at breakfast, trying to eat, and just feeling so uncomfortable, ready to get the heck out of there. Someone said, "So, you picking up on anything, Megan?" And it's interesting because at that moment, I felt just this overwhelming cloud, almost like darkness from every angle just starting to swoop in, and I said, I think it's time to go. The way everybody collectively pushed back from this table and popped up and got up and grabbed their stuff and started hauling ass out of there, it was like a scene in a movie. Other guests had weird experiences. I checked the book, paused to read. If anybody knows who this was, I would love to talk to you about your experience. This one's a little weird. I think some dude had a freaky experience and then leaned into the weirdness and hopefully just exaggerated because they didn't know what to make of it. We all stood outside of that house and we held hands in a circle, and I kind of led everybody through a grounding and protective and clearing exercise because it was so vile. The husband-to-be was actually having his stag party down the road, and they came over because they heard whispers and rumors about what was happening to us that weekend, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna run in and we're gonna take care of it." When they saw the look on our faces and they heard me say absolutely nobody's going into that house, they decided not to go in. I got in my car and was completely silent and white-knuckled my grip on the steering wheel until the tree line broke about an hour later and I was getting closer to home. I burst into tears and started sobbing because up until that point, I had never faced anything that dark or malevolent in my life. A few of us called each other after to process what had happened. It was wild.
A ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
This is not so much ghost story as it is paranormal. And is it really paranormal or just something going on with my own mind? I'll tell the story. You can decide for yourself. This goes back to when I was in my 20s, back in the early 1980s. And a bunch of us young, hard-working guys decided that we wanted to go out and have a party on a Saturday night. Now, we were a pretty responsible group of guys, so we picked out ourselves a designated driver, and we set it up so that he'd take care of everything, and the rest of us were good to go. So we went down to our bar, and we proceeded to do just that. Well, pretty deep into the party, there was an emergency call came into the bar, and our designated driver had to leave. It was a serious emergency. I don't remember what, but there was no getting around it. So he had to leave, which left the rest of us in a pretty stuck position, because this was before there was Uber, and in this particularly rural town that I was in, there was no taxi service. So some of the guys were able to find their way home, me not so much. And I made a bad decision. I thought I could make it. Yeah, it was probably only a 3 to 5 mile drive from that bar to where I lived. Got in the car, started driving home, and sure enough, I passed out behind the wheel. And I was awakened shortly thereafter by the blaring of horns, and I mean very big horns, and I woke up and I am getting ready to dead center punch an 18-wheeler. Now, my hands were at about 10 and 2. My hands were probably about 1 and 3. I tried to turn the wheel to avoid the collision, and that steering wheel would not turn. And I looked down there, and in between my hands was another set of hands that were not mine. They were long. They were about twice as long as mine, bony, grayish blue with black fingernails. They looked like those Halloween gloves that you can buy at Spirit Halloween. They looked just exactly like that, but they were on that steering wheel. And the part that I've never got over is if those hands were on that steering wheel, where was the rest of the body? I couldn't see that. So I try and turn this wheel, it will not move. The gas pedal is pegged all the way down, even though my feet are not on any of the pedals. Well, the adrenaline kicked in. I was a pretty big old farm boy back in those days, and I grabbed that wheel and cranked it just as hard as I could. And the instant I did, those hands disappeared. The gas pedal let off. I slapped the brakes, but I instantly lost control of the vehicle. Went off the road, down through a ditch, and right through a farmer's wooden fence. Came to a stop in his field. Got out, took a look. Yeah, I made it. I was alive. I was scared as could be, but I was alive and looked like my car could drive. Well, right about that time, pickup pulled up behind me. 2 guys got out, came down, checked on me. Yeah, I'm okay. Looks like my vehicle's drivable, blah, blah, blah. You okay, son? Yes, I am. They took off, and I could tell that they knew I'd been drinking. And I could pretty much predict what was going to happen next, and sure enough, real shortly after they left, a state patrolman pulls up. He comes out, looks at what's going on, comes down, talks to me. Yes, sir. I'm fine, vehicle's drivable, 1 car accident, blah, blah, blah. Make you nice, right? This old state patrolman, he looks at me, and now, at that time, I was 6 foot tall and about 235 pounds. This guy looks at me, he reaches over, grabs a handful of my shirt with his left hand, lifts me up, and looks me right dead in the eye and says, son, you get home, and you make sure I do not regret giving you a second chance. Yes, sir. Don't have to tell me twice, sir. Thank you, sir. Well, I headed home. It was just a few hundred yards down the road, quite honestly. Went in, dove in bed, got me a couple hours of very necessary sleep, woke up, choked down a couple of cups of instant coffee, grabbed the farm truck and all the tools I needed, and headed right back to where my car had gone to that fence. I was stopped up there on the road, on the embankment, ran down there, tore out the old broken boards, grabbed my rakes and shovels, fixed up his pasture as best I could, grabbed some boards, hammered them back in. Fortunately, everything was white. It was all whitewash, easily matched. I painted it up. I was working just as quietly and as quickly as I possibly could because I wanted to get out of there before the crack of dawn and before anybody knew what had happened. So I'm packing up the last of my tools into the truck, getting ready to leave, and I hear behind me the slow clap. I turn around, and there sat the farmer on his porch. And yeah, old Betsy was leaning up against the wall right next to him. He looks at me and says, "I really appreciate you taking responsibility for that, young man. I'm glad I didn't have to look you up later." Yes, sir, I'm glad of that too. I looked down at him. What could I say? I said, "Well, sir, I am sorry for any inconveniences. Does this look good enough?" And he looks at me and says, "Yes, sir, that looks mighty fine. You have yourself a good morning." So I climbed back into my truck, headed home, and started my day. But that is the story of the very last time that I ever drove under the influence. Happy old boy.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
In high school, when I was younger, something pretending to be my mom came into my room late at night, and it wasn't her. So my family actually lived in a haunted house. It was crazy because we built the house and there was nothing on the land before. But literally on the very first day that we moved in, my mom and dad and I brought boxes to the house and left my sister there while we went back to our old house to pick up more boxes. And by the time we came back with the new boxes, my sister was trying to take the screen off of our window and climb out of the house because she said she heard men in the kitchen talking, so she had locked her bedroom door. And yeah, she was the only one in the house at the time. So let's fast forward a little bit. It's October of 2013. Stuff had been happening in the house. My sister and I kept telling my parents that there's things that are going on, but they weren't really believing us. It was kind of like a horror movie. So it's October 2013. I'm sitting in my bedroom. Here's my room. My sister's room is right here. A long hallway right here, then an open floor plan with a kitchen, living room, and then my parents' bedroom on the other side of the kitchen. So I heard somebody moving around dishes and stuff in the actual kitchen area. So I thought it was my mom. I said, "Hey, Mom, are you out there?" And I heard my mom say, "Yeah," like exactly like that. And I'm like, "Could you bring me a glass of water?" Because I was already in bed. I don't know why I asked that. But I heard my mom respond back and say, "Yeah, I'm coming," like something like that. So I'm thinking I'm getting some water. My mom's going to come, bring it to me. And I heard that. It's so crazy. I hear her walking down the hallway all the way up to my bedroom door. And right when the footsteps get to my bedroom door, silence. Keep in mind, it's pitch black. I'm just in my bed. And I hear my mom, or what I think is my mom, get down on the floor on all fours. I had carpet in my bedroom. And it was like she scurried around my bed, like going around my bed. And I literally was like, "Mom, what the hell are you doing?" And I got up and I took my phone out and turned my flashlight on. The moment I turned the flashlight on, noises stopped completely. And I'm like, oh my God, I get chills. There's nobody in here. There was literally nobody in the room. And shortly after that, my sister came out of her bedroom and was asking what the hell happened. She had heard my mom's voice as well, and she heard me screaming. And that's when we both went and got my parents. And yeah, the story of that is actually insane. We ended up having psychics come to try and cleanse the house. It didn't work. There was a time when my dad thought someone broke into the house, so he got a weapon and was walking around the house trying to make sure no one was in there. No one was in there. Tons of different stuff. We also discovered there might be pioneer settlers buried under the grounds of the house. I went down to the courthouse in South Dakota to look all of it up. And yeah, I could go on for days and days with ghost stories, but that was definitely the creepiest. Hearing my mom's voice and it walking up to my door and then crawling around on all fours. That's some shit that I don't know if people really believe still. I don't know if you're believing this, but that 100% happened to me. And that was one of the reasons why I got into the career of wanting to paranormal investigate. Because once you have an experience like that, you're kind of in the world and you can't get out of it. At least I couldn't.
Well, hello, fellow travelers. At this point, more than half of you are following me because of the story that I stitched with audacity. And I know you want more stories, so I'll do my best not to disappoint y'all. But I'm going to ask a favor. We've all heard the ghost stories now. We've all heard the dark and scary side of things. I want to hear your stories from the other side. So please stitch this and tell me your true but unexplainable story about the time that you were visited or helped by benevolent forces. God, angels, saints, ancestral spirits, however you define them. And if you don't have such a story, can you please send this to someone who does? Because I know that these stories are out there, and I think that it's important that they get heard, because there's a balance to our lives and to this universe. And in keeping with TikTok's finest tradition, I'll go first. This is the story of, I just call her the Ghost Kitty. A long time back, I was a married man. I had a wife, 2 cars, a little 2-story cracker box house with an add-on in a working class neighborhood, and 2 kids at the time of this tale, and mostly things were good. The most terrifying thing about being a parent, though, is that deep down, you know that your children are mortal. And at some point for most parents, it seems, you end up confronting that fact. When she was about 5, my daughter got sick. And I mean very sick. It was some kind of an upper respiratory infection, pneumonia, along that kind of line. She originally caught what seemed like a cold, had a fever, and was having a hard time breathing. And then one night, her fever skyrocketed. It became very dangerously high. We couldn't get it down, and she began to struggle to breathe. And we were scared that we were going to lose her. So we took her to the hospital, and they rushed her into the emergency room. And they weren't playing games either. There was no doctor house moment. They found her a room, started her on breathing treatments, and hit her with every kind of broad-spectrum antibiotic drug that they could think of. So she was in there for a few nights until they got her stabilized, and then they were finally able to send her home with us. Now, my wife was able to stay home and watch over her. Me, on the other hand, I had to return to work, had to keep that insurance going and to pay the bills, So I get ready to go to work one morning, coffee in hand, and I open the door and I hear a tiny noise. I look down and I had nearly stepped on a tiny kitten-shaped ball of fur. I look down at it and say, well, hello there. And it just stuck its little tail straight up like a salute and walked into the house as if it owned the place. Now, the way this house was laid out, if you walked straight ahead, there was the kitchen, with all of its welcoming food smells and all that, which should have been very tempting for a lost and stray kitten. So I expected her to head straight there. But she did not. Now, if you take an immediate left, there was a living room, all nice and dark, with comfortable cushions, places to hide, and things like that. She wasn't interested in that either. No. Instead, she trotted across the house, went around a corner to where the staircase was, as if she knew it was there the whole time, and shot straight up those stairs. I hear my daughter scream, "Kitty!" Now, as a husband and as a dad, sometimes you know that the fight is over before it ever begins. I was not a cat person back then. But this little kitten turned out to be a sweetheart. She was long-haired tabby with a little M on her forehead and an extra poofy tail that was about as big around as a banana. So we set up a feeding place for her. We got her litter box, and she took right to those as if she had always known what those things were. Now, she was friendly and affectionate with all of us, but she stuck by my daughter like glue. Every time my daughter was down and not feeling well, that cat would cuddle up with her, purr, make biscuits, and, do all those adorable cat things. And when my daughter was feeling good, they played together nonstop. Well, days passed, and eventually my daughter began to feel better. Soon she got well enough and she could go back to school. I came home that first night that she'd been back to school and found that my wife and my daughter were frantic. The little kitten had disappeared. Now, we normally kept that house pretty closed up on a normal basis. We weren't in the best of neighborhoods, not a terrible one. But you take precautions, especially when you have small children. You don't want them getting out. The doors and windows were closed, things were usually locked up as well. But the little kitten had simply vanished. We looked everywhere, but we couldn't find her, nor could we figure out how she could have gotten out. That's not overly surprising with cats. They're tricky little beasties, and they can fit into small spaces, and they do what they want to do. So I didn't really think too much about it. I kind of figured that since my daughter left the house and this kitten was so deeply attached to her, that maybe somehow it found its way out and went looking for her. And I thought that was the end of the story. Daughter got well, cat ran away.
but it's not. My daughter returned to school, and everyone's lives started picking back up where they had left off. But after about 3 or 4 days, she had a serious relapse. We got a call from the school. Her fever was back, and she was having breathing issues. And it got very bad again. And again, we were terrified that we were going to lose her. So back to the hospital she went. I can't describe how helpless I felt as a father. You know, you're prepared for a lot of things, but you can't square up and fight a disease man to man. You have to rely on others. You have to trust the doctors. And that's not easy for a guy like me. And I was particularly worried this time because she'd been on a lot of antibiotics and treatments, and sometimes when there's a relapse, the medications are no longer effective. Well, again, there was no magical diagnosis or anything like that. The doctors slammed my daughter with all kinds of new treatments, increased doses, etc. And it worked. We went home again. And, well, you guessed it. The very next morning, when I leave for work, there's little Miss Kitten again on my porch waiting at the front door. She gave me one quick little meep and double timed it straight to my daughter's room. Kitty! Well, eventually my daughter finally recovered. Fully this time. And of course, she returned to school. But after a couple days back at school, and again, with the house completely closed up and everybody paying close attention, the kitten once again disappeared. We searched like mad. Once again, we could find no way that cat could have escaped. No one in the neighborhood had seen her outdoors either. After searching and searching, I don't remember who said it first, my wife or I, but we looked at each other for a very long time, and one of us said, you know, that was no kitten. She had done her job, and once it was finished, apparently she returned to wherever she had come from. And we never saw her again, and eventually just started referring to her as the ghost kitty. And this is her story. Thank you for stopping by.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
When I was in the 4th grade, I was best friends with this kid in my class, and he would always stay the night with me, like, a lot. And so after several months of this, I was really annoyed about it because we never stayed the night at his house or anything. We always stayed the night at my house, and this was boring for me because I wanted to stay the night at somewhere that wasn't my house. And so after, like, a while of asking him, he would always, like, blow me off. He finally was like, okay, fine, like, you know, you can come stay the night at my house, but if anything weird happens, you can't freak out about it. And that should have been, like, a sign, but, you know, at the time, I was like, what? He must mean, like, his parents get in fights or something. Whatever, you know? It's fine. So we go over there, and it's an old-school Victorian-style house, and if you saw this house in a movie, you'd be like, man, that house is definitely haunted. But, you know, whatever. They give me the tour of the house, and his bedroom was on the opposite side of the house from his parents' room. This is a big house. And the room next to his bedroom, it shared an adjoining wall, was this, like, big walk-in closet that had, like, hats and coats and shoes and all sorts of stuff, I guess, that wouldn't fit in their normal closets, all in this room, but it was all really well organized and everything along the walls and hung up and everything. And so that night after dinner, as 4th grade boys are gonna do, we wanted to stay up all night playing video games. So we're sitting there, we're crushing Mountain Dews, we're playing Mortal Kombat 2, having a blast. And it's very late, I don't know what time, 2, 3 in the morning, I don't know. All of a sudden, there is just this, like a slam into the wall from that walk-in closet room. Something slams into the wall, and I look over at him like, and he just looks annoyed. Okay, and he's like, I told you if you were gonna come stay here, if anything weird happened, like, you can't freak out. You told me. So I'm trying to power through. You know, I'm trying to be a good friend. So I'm like, all right, man. You know, I'm not gonna freak out. So a few minutes go by. We're still playing our game. Something else slams into that wall, super loud. Again, I look over at him like, what's going on here? And he's like, dude, I told you. So it happens again, and he's like, man, I'll show you in a little bit. And so we keep playing, but I'm getting really weirded out. And then all of a sudden, I can't describe it in any way other than it sounded like all of a sudden there was like a tornado in that room. Okay, like it sounds like stuff is slamming into the walls, there's scratching against the walls, like stuff is going crazy. And this goes on for several minutes, okay? And at this point, I'm not doing great, okay? I'm sitting there trying to tough through it, but like I'm not doing a great job. Anyway, this goes on for several minutes, and finally it stops. It just abruptly stops. And then several minutes go by, and then he's like, all right, I told you I'd show you, so like come look. So we get up, we go to this room. I'm freaking out. He opens the door. Everything in this room, in this walk-in closet, is like in the middle of the floor. Everything is torn off the hangers, everything, all of it's piled up. It's absolutely insane. And he's like, oh, this happens every once in a while, and it'll all be back on the hangers. Everything will be fine in the morning.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Okay, I'm going to try to do my best to talk about this quickly and also without getting too much of an adrenaline dump and shaking, because it's still to this day when I remember this story freaks me the hell out. I grew up in a very haunted house in Colorado. We found out it wasn't the house over time, it was the land. We actually did have a medium come and cleanse the house after my mom's first bout of cancer. Tons of stuff happened. I could literally tell story after story after story. We lived there for 30 years. It was bad enough that my dad actually did ask the realtor when he sold the house if he had to disclose to the new occupants that it was haunted. We found out over time, talking to other neighbors, they all had the same issues. It was the land this subdivision was built on. So the scariest thing, it was actually like a succession of things, but when we first moved in there, it was a 3-story walkout basement house built on a hillside, and I had the basement room as the oldest kid. And there was one night where I woke up, it sounded like people were banging on the doors. There was 2 entrances to my room. It sounded like they were running back and forth and trying to get in. I actually heard things in the playroom down there, like tumbling out of the cabinets and going all over the place. And when I finally worked up the courage, I turned on all the lights in my room, and one of the doors was a quick right and then left up the stairs to get up to the main level, turn around, and then go up again up to where my parents were sleeping. I was 12 or 13 at the time when this happened. I think it was about 13. So I hear all this happening. I suck up my strength to like go run. And as I start to open the door, somebody, wham, like hits the door, which made me fly back to my bed, pull up the covers. I didn't have a phone down there. Again, this is long before cell phones. So I had no phone, no way to call 911 or say somebody's broken into the house, nothing. So instead I took my boombox stereo and I turned the music up full volume. I was 2 floors below my parents' bedroom, and I thought, surely if I turn the music up all the way, they'll know something is wrong. It's about 3 in the morning. My dad did wake up, felt like something was wrong, came downstairs, saw that all my lights were on and that my music was blaring, and couldn't wake me up. The playroom, not destroyed. There was nobody down there. Nobody had broken in. Everything was sealed shut. He was so freaked out, he moved me immediately the next day up to my youngest brother's room, had him stay with my other brother while they moved my bedroom upstairs, because my dad was like, I only woke up thinking something was wrong. He didn't hear the music until he opened the basement door, and he was like, if somebody actually broke in, we wouldn't hear what was going on. So I told you that story to tell you this story. So they moved me up. It's maybe 2 nights later. I am sleeping on my brother's bed, looking down. He was at the end of the hallway from the top stairs on the 3rd floor. And it was a direct line of sight to my parents' bedroom. And I was so freaked out about what had happened. I was sleeping with the door open so I could see to their bedroom and feel like, I was kind of safe enough to get to them if I needed them. I woke up in the middle of the night to a slamming sound coming from the basement. And it sounded like doors were slamming somewhere in the house. Then I heard what sounded like running heavy footsteps up the basement stairs. It sounded like the basement door was kicked open and that someone had run around on the hardwood floors to the base of the other stairs and had run up those stairs and then stopped. Now, I was not staring down the hallway when I heard this. I was kind of like looking around, and then I looked at the base of the stairs, and I'm going to show you what I saw. Okay, so imagine that this is the top flight of the stair. So there's a whole wall coming this way and the railing for the stairs. I literally saw something like coming up this way with its hands. And it was like a black shape just looking at me down the hallway like this through the bars. I took in a big, deep breath, and I think I called for my mom, and this thing shot off like a light up the stairs. So it takes off up the stairs and like on all fours starts zooming this dark shadow thing towards my brother's door. And the door I could almost touch from the bed. So I just shot out of bed and slammed the door shut. And I mean, I screamed bloody murder. I woke up the whole house. Nothing hit the door. Nothing else happened. But of course my dad took off out of bed and ran towards my brother's room. It's like, what the hell is going on? None of the doors were open. The basement door was locked. No one had broken in. And I, after that point, until we got me moved into my other room, slept with that door shut. There are so many things that happened in that house. Like I, for a long time, could not sleep with a mirror in the same room as me because of things I saw. There was an entity that several people saw that my family didn't talk about for a very long time until we kind of, once we had the medium in, people kind of figured out something weird was going on with our house. But I have tons of stories. And I actually, if that story sounds familiar, I shared it on last podcast on the left several years ago. And I remember seeing a bunch of comments of people saying like, there's no way that's true. People lie about this stuff all the time. I am telling you, on my life, my child's life, my family's lives, this shit happened. And it happened so often. Like my mom would leave the house and call somebody from the front porch and say, I'm scared to be here alone. Everybody had something happen. Everybody. Like it just was, it was a very active house. I could tell stories for hours.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I lived in a house that was almost 300 years old, so let's talk about it. All right, so fun fact about this house that I lived in. My husband lived in this house when we were just dating for about 2 years back in 2015 to 2017, and then we moved to San Diego because we wanted to see what San Diego would bring to our lives, and then we moved back to the East Coast in 2021. So we were living on the East Coast. And mind you, when my husband lived there the first time, whenever I would go and visit him, if I would get there before he got home from work or from running errands, I just hated being there alone. The house just gave me the heebie-jeebies. So that was in 2015 to 2017. My husband just refuses to acknowledge that this house could be haunted, so he lived there peacefully. I was in shambles at all times. So fast forward to 2021, we moved back to the East Coast. We are staying with family while we're just trying to get our bearings and get new jobs and just transition back into life on the East Coast. And my husband is saying, you know, man, I really wish that that house was available again. I loved living there. It was the best. It was a dream because it was a pretty big space and the rent was really affordable, but it was haunted, so I didn't care. But anyway, my husband really wanted to move back. I said, not happening. So he went out on a limb and asked our old friend and neighbor who had lived there the entire time. She was there for almost 10 years. He followed up and just said, hey, do you know if our old unit is available or will be available? And she said, no, unfortunately, like the people have been living here, have been here for 2 years. They love it. I don't think they're going anywhere. Ironically enough, a few months later, and I think it was on Christmas Day, our old neighbor shoots at me a text and goes, hey, do you want to move back in? They're actually moving out. They're moving back down south. If you want it, I can, you know, put in a good word with the old landlord and just remind him that you guys are old tenants. It's looking pretty good for you guys to move back in. So we moved back. Yeah, we moved back. This time I felt a little bit better because we had Mona, my parrot, with us. So at least, you know, I had company, I had my BFF. So I didn't feel as scared, but I was still apprehensive, especially because even our neighbor was certain. Like, you know, she can verify that there was some weird stuff going on in this house. Just to preface, this house is a historic landmark. It was built in 1757, and a really famous blind poet lived there. I can't remember if she was born there. I know she didn't die there, but she was a blind hymn writer. Her name was Fanny Crosby. When you Google her, that's not who you want haunting your house, okay? Nothing personal, but good God, she was terrifying, okay? I'm just gonna say it, she was terrifying. I'm not even gonna, put her on the green screen here and give anyone nightmares. I'm doing you a favor. Google at your own risk. She scares the hell out of me. And if she doesn't scare the hell out of you, must be nice. So I have plenty of stories of just my experience being there, but I'm just talking about one. Sorry, it took me a while to get here, but I needed to give you all the backstory. So we're living in this house. Weird stuff is happening. Every time it happens, my husband justifies it with something ridiculous. But there was one night in particular, and ironically, it was the night of Halloween going into November 1st. If anyone knows of Samhain, if anyone knows anything about the veil thinning on the night of Halloween, then you know that sometimes activity is heightened, if you believe in that. So I'm in bed, and the layout of the house was you had your master bedroom, then there was the living room and the kitchen, and so I'm in the bedroom. Our door is closed every night because I just didn't like having that door open when I slept. I felt like people were watching me there, so, and the living room seemed to be the most active, so obviously I kept that door shut. Mona is in our bedroom with us because I'm not letting that poor bird be around ghosts by herself, so she slept in the bedroom with us in her cage because we needed her safe. And in the living room is her perch, her stand. And it was a really simple stand. Maybe if people are interested enough, I can show you what it looked like. But it was just a classic perch, and then it had this big hook, and on the hook you could hang a toy. So I would hang a toy, and it would usually have wooden bits, a chain, and then there's always a bell at the end because a lot of bird toys have bells on them. See where I'm going here? So I'm in the bedroom, doors closed, and something wakes me up in the middle of the night. And I'm laying in bed, I'm trying to go back to sleep, and then I hear a bell chime from the living room, from Mona's perch, because that's the only bell in that room. And I don't think anything of it. I just think it was just a weird coincidence. Sometimes, I mean, the house was really old. Honestly, that house should be condemned, but that's another story. The house was really old. It could have been so many different things. So I try not to think into it because I'm already heightened at all times. So I just try to go back to sleep. But then I heard it again. I heard the bell chime again. And I'm laying there. And I'm questioning that very seriously. Then I hear it again. And we're not talking about a little like, doo-doo. We're talking about a bell chime, like, ching, like take a little metal bell and whack it. And that bell is connected to things. So it's reverberating off the objects, whatever. The bell is ringing. And it's not a tiny bell. It's a bell designed for a 3-pound scarlet macaw or anything of a similar size. So it needs some force to hit it. So this bell is going off every 30 seconds. So finally, I'm like, okay, I'm officially terrified out of my mind. If it happens again, I'm waking up John because he's just sound asleep. Just sweet dreams. Sure enough, the bell chimes again. And I shake John and I say, the bell is going off in the living room. And he's very tired. He's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, Mona's bell is ringing in the living room. And she's clearly in here with us sleeping. She's covered in her cage. It's not coming from here. It's coming from the living room. He's like, no, it's not. And the bell chimes. And when I tell you that this man shot out of bed, somehow had a flashlight already in hand and goes into the living room and he's looking around and he can't find anything. No evidence of what could be making the bell chime. Have no idea what was causing that. But he comes back in the room with the pole and the toy attached to the pole in his hand, and he puts it in the closet and he gets back into bed, and all he says is, that was weird, and goes to sleep. He just goes right back to sleep. Obviously I didn't sleep well that night. And the next day when I tried to bring it back up to him, my mans tried to chalk it up to, well, sometimes we get mice in the house, so a mouse could have done that. Mice are this big and weigh next to nothing, and there is absolutely nothing they can do to create enough power and force to make that bell chime. So yeah, that was weird. I hated living there. especially ever since that. So we don't live there anymore. But yeah, that was really weird. Just bells chiming in the middle of the night.